Here's your host, Kenny Lafler. All right.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm Kenny Lafler, your host for the evening. And I'm here with a few of the other Weissstronauts, Jeff Norcross, Kevin Quinn, Nate Logus. Wave your hand, Nate. Pete Weiss, of course. And along with occasional Weisstronaut, Neil Spalding, who's manning the hot roll laminator and mission control for the broadcast. Thank you, Neil. The Weissstronauts have been together for about 20 years. And I guess in that time, we've done something in the range of probably 500 gigs together. So with that many shows, there are bound to be some great ones, some not so great ones, and some just plain weird ones. And what we're here to do tonight is to talk about some of our memorable or not so memorable Weisstronautical roundtable tour stories. And before we jump in on that, does anyone have anything to say about the video we just watched?
It was a special occasion.
It was, yeah. What was the occasion, Pete?
That was my friend Jonas Katkovich's son who graduated from Wesleyan. And what was that, about maybe 4 years ago?
Yeah, wow.
And it was like a
could
graduation.
Be 4, could be 20. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a graduation party, and it was attended by all walks of life. I think a lot of people, all ages for sure. And it was surreal for us because we were kind of in a rush to get back to Boston to play an evening show. And also we found ourselves playing in front of a lot of people who didn't seem to be people that go out and see a lot of rock music. So it was fun.
Yeah, it seemed like a first-time occasion for a lot of the folks there. But you know what? It was fun. We got fed.
Oh, yeah.
And
we were haunted.
And it's a good way of reminding the people that the Weissstronauts are available for your occasion, too. So give Pete a call if you want to hire us. So getting into our first story, we've had a lot of tours over the years, and there have been many members of the Weissstronauts. It's a larger group than what you're just seeing here. And Jeff is going to tell us a little bit about one particular tour that had one kind of illustrious band member. Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, so my first road trip with the Weissstronauts was in 2006. And among the things that were special about it was the fact that Doug somehow convinced Doug Yule, who most famously was a member of the Velvet Underground, to play bass for us. So
say that again, Jeff. I'm not sure I believe you.
So Pete somehow convinced Doug Yule, former member of the Velvet Underground, so Doug was in the second phase of the Velvet Underground after John Cale left, and but played on, two super influential records, the self-titled album as well as Loaded, and the two records that were released later on, VU and Another View. Somehow he got him to come out of basically musical retirement and play bass for the Weissstronauts.
So do you have?
If I can just jump in, I had worked with him in the studio and helped him do some recording in the late '90s. He had some new material, and long story short, I hooked up with him and worked with him in a production kind of capacity, and we stayed in touch. And then, what was it? Maybe 8 or 10 years later, we found ourselves booking this tour, and we didn't have a bass player available. We called I think we called like Pete Sutton and the usual suspects, Jim Gerdeman, for like, can someone come on tour with us and do the bass? No one could do it. And I happened to be talking to Doug on the phone. We were just catching up. And I half jokingly said to him, like, hey, my band is doing this tour and we're short a bass player. You want to dust off the bass and come out on the road with us? We pretty much can't pay you anything, and you'll be sleeping on couches like us, and it'll be a good time, though. Long drives. And to my astonishment, he said, that sounds great.
Yeah, Doug, a real gentleman, very self-effacing. He shared a lot of really fun and cool stories about his time in the Velvet Underground, and then working with Lou Reed later on, as well as other projects he was involved in. But I think he was most comfortable talking about building fiddles and playing fiddle, and just kind of asking questions about our lives. He was just very, very fun to hang out with. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I remember Doug spent a lot of time in the van just kind of sitting meditatively. He wouldn't read. He wasn't like a magazine guy like the rest of us. He just kind of would sit and be patient. And the other thing I remember about him is that at a lot of our shows, there would be like a little lineup of Velvet Underground fans who would show up with their LPs for Doug to sign. And he was incredibly kind and patient with those folks, even though this is something he must have done over and over again over the years, but he was great about it.
Yeah. And the one thing I remember him saying was, I don't want you publicizing the gigs as having anything to do with me personally, or any mention of the Velvet Underground. And only one club did not adhere to that rule, that place in Philadelphia.
Right.
The Khyber Pass.
Yeah, but no, it was great.
Yeah, the only reason we got that gig in Philadelphia was because I told the guy that we were playing with Doug Yule. He gave us the gig for that reason. So, oh well. But I think he allowed you to. I mean, I'm seeing a picture of the poster. I think he allowed you to put his name on the poster, Pete.
I'm trying to remember. This was a while ago. I think he said there was some phrasing thing. It was sort of an awkward. I felt bad bringing this up, but I was like, well, to what degree are you comfortable with us, exploiting your name?
Yeah.
And I think he said, you can say my name, and you can say like formerly of the Velvet Underground, but I think he said something like, don't say of the Velvet Underground, or don't make Velvet Underground the big thing. Yeah. And I was like, that's fair. So I think we were allowed to say Velvet Underground, but just not make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. So that killed the whole idea of having his name 3 times the size of ours on the posters, unfortunately.
Right.
And the tour still went pretty well, despite that. I know there are some pictures that Neil is showing of the first show that I think the first show we did, or maybe the second, but it was in a basement in Alston, complete fire trap situation. And a bunch of kids who were somehow drawn by the rumor that Doug Yule was going to be playing in this basement. And I think they showed up expecting to see like 1968, 19-year-old Doug Yule instead of the Doug Yule of today. But they seemed to have an awesome time. They certainly enjoyed themselves.
The first gig that was at Abbey, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Cool gig.
Yeah, I think it was Abbey. Then Rhode Island, then the BU gig. Because remember, we drove down to Rhode Island, back up, and then back south again.
Glad you do. No, I don't remember that. Any other
Remember
abiding
Robot
memories of-
Dick? Wasn't Robot Dick?
Was that
That tour?
Oh,
I
that'll
think
that'll
it
be
was.
that'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
a story for another day. Yeah, that'll be a story for another day.
Volume 2.
And Jeff, you were also going to talk about the Ardent recording
Yeah.
studio experience, right?
Yeah. So the Weisstronautics have 3 times recorded at Ardent Studios. I was part of 2 of those recording sessions, and the third
For the
one
people
was.
for the people who don't know what or where is
Yeah.
Ardent Studios?
So Ardent Studio is a legendary recording studio in Memphis, Tennessee, that was started by John Fry in the 1960s. And among the artists who have recorded records there that you've no doubt heard are Isaac Hayes, the Staple Singers, ZZ Top, Big Star, The Replacements, Cat Power, a lot of people.
And the
Led,
Weisstronautics.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin. Yeah,
Stevie
did they
Ray
actually
Vaughan.
record there, or was there just mixing done? It's never
I
been
think it
clear
was.
to me.
I think it was overdubs and mixing, and
Nice.
they blocked out a week,
Yeah.
supposedly.
Anyway, Ardent and John Fry are talked about in the same way as Sam Phillips from Sun Studios and Jim Stewart from Stax Records and Chips Moman from American Studios. So a real legend in recording. Anyway, because we were 3-time returning customers, we were invited to have a private tour of the Stax Museum with John Fry. And there's a picture up now, I think right now, where we're standing under the famous Stax billboard. Anyway, it was again, a legend who was a super nice guy, very funny, very patient. I think I bored him to death with my endless questions about Big Star, because probably most people who talk to him ask too many questions about Big Star.
But you did kind of glom onto him and keep very close for the entire tour, as I recall. But
I just wanted to hear what he had to
he's
say.
so great. Yeah.
But he was a really nice guy. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years after, I think in 2014. But that was great.
This is John
That's
Fry,
right.
just to
Yeah,
clarify.
John Fry.
John Fry.
Yes.
Yeah.
The high point for me of that Stax Museum tour was getting to see one of Booker T's original organs that was, I think, in the main studio space, or at least an organ he had played, which blew my mind. So, Pete, any particular memories of the Ardent or John Fry experience?
It's weird. I was actually just going to say, like, the Stax Museum was really, really well done, and I was just going to recommend, if you're ever visiting Memphis, definitely go there.
Good gift shop too.
Yeah, too many memories about Ardent. I'm kind of I'm at a loss right now. Maybe we should do another episode that's like just the Memphis sessions.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
And we worked with Jeff Powell, who
Oh my
was
God,
himself a giant in engineering and record production. So
yeah, Jeff and his assistant Lucas Peterson. I think Lucas was on every session that we did too.
He was.
So we became tight with both those guys as a team, and hung out with them. And I think one year we even played a gig at the bar that was basically on the same block as Ardent, and that was it was really fun. But man, Jeff Powell, the guy can tell a story.
Yeah, we should have him on one of these things.
We really should.
He's stories.
He's got some great ones.
All right. Well, Kevin Quinn, you've been sitting there watching all of this. You've got some stories to share with us. Hit us with one.
Yeah, I mean, mine really are very non-impactful stories.
Good.
They're just sort of absurd little moments, of which there have been many through the years. The first one I guess I'll talk about is it goes back to 2001. I think somebody told me this is true. I don't know how accurate that is. And I think it was one of the earlier ones with the original, well, when you had joined the band and Aaron.
Yeah.
And I think the only song that we kind of went off the rails with at that point was probably the theme song at the end. And we were playing Washington Square Tavern, which was like a short-lived establishment in Brookline, right?
Well, it's still around, but it was one of our only residencies.
Yes,
I
right.
think we played there like every other Wednesday for 2 years or something.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a restaurant situation. So a lot of tables set up, and as I recall, it in this particular night, it was kind of a snowy night, light snow falling. Not a lot of people there, and certainly nobody at tables anywhere near us. So there's that sort of distance where there are people there and they're paying attention to you, but they're kind of keeping their distance. So there's sort of an awkward vibe to it. And as we got toward the end of the night, we're doing our Coming Around the Mountain theme song. And at this point, I'd say there were probably about like 6 people left in the restaurant. And off in the corner was somebody getting up and getting ready to leave. And they had wrapped themselves up, preparing to head out into the winter night. And in the moment of the song, I just kind of launched into this insane, there's a mummy here, which I just kind of kept saying over and over.
You were saying it, you were shouting it at the top of your lungs.
In fact, I came across the audio of that, and I'm going to play it through my phone. It's going to sound terrible, but I'll give you a little.
Oh my God, this is incredible.
Everyone mute, everyone mute.
The Weisstronautical folks, give it up once again for Kenny Lafler. Give it a Gwen. I'd like to get serious for a second.
Anyway, let's say that was the event. That's the moment it happened. And it was just a silly, brief moment. I feel like it was kind of early, though, because I remember in particular, Kenny, you being a little bit like, what the hell is going on?
Well, yeah, I just had no
That well.
idea. I had no idea who the mummy was or why you were yelling, "Is the mummy here?"
Oh, because you were new.
Yeah, I had not yet learned that with Quinter, anything is possible at any time, especially when we give him room to improvise. And I caught on to that later, but it was a new experience. For me.
And improvise and interact with the crowd, or the audience, I should say.
Yeah, we could go down that path. So that's one thing, and I'll just quickly hit the other one that much more recently, I think like 2018 or 2017 maybe. We played a gig up in Portland, and we would eventually add a song called Cranky to our set, which always gives me an opportunity to freeform on a just random, no forethought and just sort of launching in. The idea is that I'm cranky as we're playing the song, so I just kind of go off on a cranky rant. And this was a pretty well attended show. This was a packed house in Portland, opening for Southern Culture on the Kids, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I just started venting about something and somehow ended up taking it out a little bit on Pete. And Pete kind of tried to calm me down, and I got a little, played up the fact that don't try to calm me down. I kind of gave him a push, a shove. And then we kind of just went full bore into this, we're having a fight sequence.
This is on stage. This is a fairly large stage with pro lighting and everything, and like for us, a fairly large club,
So
and a sold out crowd who are not familiar with us.
So it's the perfect time to do something like this.
Yeah,
of course.
let's stage a fight.
Didn't you kind of take it off stage too a little bit?
Yes,
Essentially,
they left the stage for
we left the stage, and then I think Kenny came off and joined us. So there was definitely a lot of like, but the song continued, of course. The music played on.
But the sound man like came up to me and was like, dude, are these guys okay? Like he was it was that convincing.
Oh, he was a very like sweet guy. I remember because he came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, did you and the bass player like patch things up? Are you cool? Because I was really concerned about you."
I think a lot of the audience thought the same thing, because after our set, when I was mingling with the crowd, people were asking me the same thing. Like, was that real? Yeah. And I said, I don't know.
This was a wrestling moment.
I think we got kind of physical, didn't we? Like
a little bit. But.
Were we on the ground at some point? Did anyone like get knocked over? I think the guitars came off.
They did,
and we were sort of like shoving.
Yeah, there was some, but there was no pain inflicted. But
no.
But there was. I think we kind of like took it off stage, and then we knew like we had something going, and we just kind of played off it, and then slowly came back, and we kissed, made up, and. But yeah, there was that moment of going back into the crowd after the set, and people staring at us, unsure of what like kind of people we were, and that's always where it gets a little.
Yeah, these like, hotheads. Yeah,
you almost don't want to tell them, oh, that was just BS, because then they're going to feel stupid for having been had, you know.
There's a picture that we only have one photo of that gig, and it just showed maybe 8 seconds ago, and it's there's a guy in the audience that's on the right of the picture, and he's flash lit, and he's in profile, and there's a woman turning around and looking at the camera, and that's the only known photograph of that evening.
What is like Pete? You look like you have this bouffant hairdo at that. There's this weird effect on stage.
It might have been like hat head or something. I think it was in the winter. Yeah, Elvis hair.
And then Jeff up there looks like he's playing a tambourine, singing Davy Jones' part.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I don't know.
We're probably playing whatchamacallit.
New England Boiled.
No. God, it's been so long since we played. I don't remember the song titles anymore.
Was it one of the holiday tunes?
No.
It was Kidney Pie.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah, Kidney Pie.
Yeah, because I played. Yeah,
that looks like
a
kidney pie.
Oh,
looks like a kidney pie moment.
Good sleuth work. Yeah.
Speaking of kidney pie, there was a tour we were on in 2008. Very interesting tour. Started out with a 1,500-mile drive to New Orleans, during which we were almost forced off the road by a crazed trucker, but that's another story for another day. And then we kind of wound our way from New Orleans back north. I think we spent a couple days in Memphis. We did an art recording session. Then we went to Nashville and Knoxville. And then we were supposed to have a show in Asheville, but it got canceled at the last minute. What was the situation with that, Pete?
Well, this was it 2008? I think this was
so.
Yeah. So this was a time I should start by saying the Weissstronauts all around were very slow to jump on the smartphone bandwagon. So in 2008, I think we all had not even flip phones, but it might've been like pay by the minute, you know, we all had burner phones. But I remember Wi-Fi was very valuable. I did have my laptop, and MySpace was a thing. Remember MySpace? Anyway, I preface this by saying that we came into Asheville, and I think it was in the late morning. You know, I think wherever we had been. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, we got there early in the day, and we decided to go to the club. We went to the club, and we saw that it was under construction, and it was closed for the next month. So we got onto MySpace. Long story short, got in touch with Mr. John Huss, who put us in touch with Jeff Carter and his wife Sarah, who run what is it called, the Rockbrook Camp for Girls in Brevard.
Yes.
So we got a substitute gig at a summer camp for girls.
So first we did our laundry, because you always got to do your laundry on tour. I think there's a laundry photo. And then we had about a 2.5, 3-hour drive to the Rockbrook Camp for Girls. And we spent the whole time kind of negatively speculating about how much these girls were going to hate us. I mean, we were talking about, girls aged 6 to 16 whose dads show up and play this old fart music from the 60s. We just thought they were going to hate it. And so we were really expecting the worst. What I remember is that when we actually arrived at the camp and we drove on to the property, that it was just the most exquisite, glorious paradise. It was late afternoon. Everything was green and gorgeous. The sunlight was kind of filtering through the trees. It was just beautiful. There was this gorgeous little lake. We drove up to the dining hall and were invited in, and all the kids were having dinner, and we were seated at a table with a bunch of counselors, and they fed us dinner. I think it was like a chicken cutlet and some broccoli and maybe some peach cobbler or something. It was
very campy, very campy. Yeah.
Very camp food. And all these girls were like singing camp songs and all this stuff like this. And they were kind of eyeballing us a little bit, like, what are these elderly men doing here? What's going on? And then an announcement was made that there were some special guests, and they introduced us, and they said, they're here to play at a surf dance party. And that was when I kind of realized, oh, it's a surf dance party. It's not a bunch of old farts playing old music that they don't care about. It's going to be a surf dance party. So they had us go to the barn, which was the gym, and set up. And I think we were still a little unsure of how this was going to play out. But then 200 girls streamed into this place, and we started to play, and they just started dancing like maniacally. It was fantastic. And at the end of our first song, the moment after we finished, I was suddenly aware of this incredibly piercing, high-pitched squealing sound. I sort of thought, oh God, my tinnitus finally kicked in after all these years of, no, it was the voices of 200 6 to 16-year-old girls squealing in joy. It was unbelievable. It was an incredible response. And for the next 45 or so minutes, we played while they, did conga lines and had dance contests, and it was one of the best gigs that I've ever been part of.
Kenny, I think that there were some. I think there were some really like younger kids there too. I remember that Soot sat transfixed like right in front of us, and it was like the first time they had seen live music ever.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what was like 5 or 8 or something. I mean,
yeah.
Kind of magical moment.
Little kids, yeah.
And how is nobody decided to climb the rock wall while playing? How come that?
Well, they have rules against that, Quinter. Only with permission.
Oh.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of the kids were seeing, a live rock band for the first time, and I hope some of them have their own bands now. They'd probably be like the youngest kids would probably be in their late teens at this point.
Wow, the shrieking was amazing. I remember like the first song that we finished. We played a song and we're playing and we see them all dancing and it's magic. And then we end the song all on a downbeat, boom, and it was like our version of Shea Stadium, like.
Yeah.
Deafening. Yeah. Anyway.
First and only time that's happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a good gig, and it led to another good gig that evening, but where we played at a local bar for all of the counselors from all the camps around, which was wild in a completely different way. But we'll save that for some other time. Speaking of wild gigs, there used to be, or maybe still is, a bar in Worcester called the Dive Bar. And I'm sure Nathan has some fond memories of a particular night that we played there. Right, Nate?
Oh, I don't have memories anymore, which is why you gave me a script.
Okay.
And
I want to read it.
I appreciate it. This is what happens, people. Is it okay if I go off script, though?
Do whatever you want.
Because I feel like I want to talk about something else and then come back to this one, because maybe the dive bar will be, people will have lots of comments on that one. But on the suggestion list, you had kind of the Holmes amp story, which I was thinking a lot about today because, well, I won't go into that. But anyway, it's special to me because it's how it was my introduction to the Weissstronauts. Really, it was how I joined the band, not playing drums, but as a substitute bass player, because I think Quinn, didn't you just became a dad, right? Or it wasn't your first? Not playing drums.
I had probably, that whole time I had become a dad again, probably.
Right.
In 04, I think 03 is when I had my last one. So
Ken will know the exact date and time probably, but that was they were about to go on tour, and then Ken was I was having lunch with Ken and he was like saying, "Oh, Quinter can't make it, maybe we should cancel the tour. Maybe we're not going to go on tour." And I was thinking, like, dude, you've got 3 guitar players. Why don't you just go on tour and play with 2 guitars and one of you can play bass? And then Ken, his eyes lit up and he's like, no, you should play bass. So I owned a bass, but I had never ever played out ever. And I took that as a challenge. And I decided to learn bass, and then so my first experience was to go on tour with the Weissstronauts playing bass. I was a fan, but I had not played bass, and but I didn't have an amp. So clever Pete was thinking like, I've got the amp for you.
Okay. Not sure exactly that's what happened, but
probably not what happened. But anyway, Pete had an amp because some dude that was sleeping on the couch in his basement.
Oh, Jeb. It's worth mentioning Jeb Enslin. It was Jeb Enslin's amp. Please continue.
So we took that on tour. So that was just this perfect. Can I say cluster starts with an F? Maybe not. Yeah. We were on tour, and so we took this amp out, and it was just this. Unique experience where, so first off, I was what we call a bedroom bass player, which meant, like I've only, played in my home. I had not played on stage. And on stage, the trick is that everything, like you got to be able to hear. That's what experience is about, playing out live in situations that are less than ideal. And this amp was it about this big?
Yeah. I'm seriously gonna guess it was literally like 12 watts.
Okay. Yeah. It was a very underpowered amp, and it also had wiring problems. So we found this out, of course, not before the tour, but on the first gig, because I plugged in and we started playing, and it immediately started cutting out. So I spent, I think, the entire tour, save for 1 or 2 shows, playing one note and then reaching around, swearing and jiggling the cable handle until it came back in again, and then playing another note, and then it would cut out and I would swear and turn around and jiggle the handle. So,
my God, that's awesome.
That was...
that's not awesome, but that's awesome.
Night after night. That was the first tour. That was my first tour experience with the Weissstronauts.
I kind of vaguely remembered that we knew that amp was not really up to snuff, but we just didn't kind of think it through. And we just figured, it'll be okay. We knew there were going to be problems with it. And then there were the whole trip.
Luckily, there were a couple of gigs where there was a borrowed bass amp that was overpowered, and Nate was glorious. Nate was just like laying it down.
Well, there was one gig where there was like there was a back line, and it was a several band night, and there was like one of those SVTs with the 8x10, and it was like, you hit the string, and then this wall of sound from behind you comes. It was glorious. Anyway, just want to say that was my introduction to the band, and that was beautiful. Shortly thereafter, I think Jeff was, well, Emily was on that tour, but then Jeff started subbing for Emily, and we started playing gigs. And then I realized that Jeff was a guitar player. So I said, no way. Like, I'm not playing bass. You play bass, and I'll switch to drums. And that's kind of where we went from there. But
thank you for doing that.
and then we had the dive bar experience.
The dive bar. The dive bar
Well,
was weird.
let's shift over to Pete for a second for this one, because we're running a little short on time, and I want to be sure that we get a chance to hear Pete's story about the dive bar.
Okay, yeah, we are running quite low. What do we need? What do you need from me?
What song are we playing?
Okay, so the dive bar, great, charming, sort of local dive bar. I would call it a mid-scale dive bar, but it had an underwater theme. So there were like oxygen tanks and stuff like that, and puffer fish all around. And we played there maybe 4 or 5 times, and we always had a great time. But I will say the beer they had there, nothing on tap was under, say, like 7.8% alcohol. So it was easy to maybe tipple a little too much, because they were quite generous with the free beers. Ken, can you remind me what happened before the What Song episode?
Well, all I remember about that is that we had taken a break in between sets, and we had come back and started playing, and we were playing one of the songs that has a tendency to go off into outer space, and we went very far off into outer space.
Right. So thank you. That reminds me. It is a song that can go off a little bit, but it usually doesn't go as far out into outer space as it did that night. So we're playing this song, and I think Neil is showing photos from that actual gig, possibly.
Yeah.
And you can see in our eyes we're not quite right. So we're playing the outer space section of the song, and it goes on, and it sounds really good, as I recall. We're like, wow, we're improvising, we're bouncing off each other musically. The audience was into it. But at a certain point, Kevin Quinn on bass comes over to me. We're playing, and it's pretty loud, and he kind of leans into my face and he yells, and I don't really hear him. And so then he yells it again, but he over-mouths, the words. What song are we playing? And I looked at him, and I just shook my head. I was like, come on, man, we're all professionals here. You got to remember what song we're playing. Obviously we're playing shoot, hang on a second. What? Wait a minute. So then I turn around to my left, and Kenny's blissfully playing drunken guitar, whatever, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And I look over at Kenny and I go, Kenny, what song are we playing? And he does basically the same exact thing I did.
had the same experience. I saw both Pete and Kevin looking at me, and probably George, who was also there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And with this look of what song are we playing on their faces, and I thought, oh, what a pair of kidders those guys are. Quinner again with his dry sense of humor, having a laugh at me. Wait, what song are we playing?
So there was like a solid 2 minutes where
nobody knew.
None of us knew what song we were playing, and yet we were playing it. And for the record, folks, it was Tawdry.
Tawdry. Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we're down to our last minute. This time has flown by so quickly. We're going to do this again, though, fellas. We have so many tour stories. We didn't even scratch the surface. Anyone have any parting comments to make before we say goodbye? We have some shows coming up, believe it or not, this summer. We're going to be playing at Remnant Brewing in Bow Market in Somerville on June 10th and July 8th, I think. June 10th, June 17th, sometime in June.
17th, I think.
June 17th, okay. So we actually will be back trying to figure out what song we're playing in just a couple of months.
Good times.
Yeah.
Great oldies.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Neil.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Thanks for joining us.
Neil Spall.
See you guys next time we do one of these.
Yes. Thanks for joining.
Peace out. Let's
You
milk
have
it.
been watching. You had to be there. A Weisstronautical get together and talking about Tales from the Road. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and catch us next time. Here's your host, Kenny Lafler.